Welcome to Pineapple's video tutorial describing the use of Computer Concepts Artworks program. We hope you'll find it both useful and instructive. By using a video tutorial, we hope to be able to show the way in which a real computer artist uses artworks, which is something no handbook can hope to achieve. Walter Briggs will be our instructor for the next hour, and we hope that after watching the way Walter works, you'll be able to appreciate some of the finer points of this powerful vector drawing program. Before computers had been invented, Walter was plying his trade as an airbrush artist, producing many commercial pictures and graphics. Later, as computing power reached the point where the results were comparable with real painting techniques, Walter bought an Archimedes and a copy of Artworks, and soon became the first winner of the Computer Concepts Artworks competition. This winning picture of a kingfisher prompted Walter to start up his own computer graphics company, which he called Kingfisher Graphics. Before handing over to Walter, we should explain that the tutorial does assume that you have some experience with Acorn Archimedes computers. At the very least, you should be familiar with the features described in the welcome guide and know the basic principles of manipulating desktop windows. Now, let's meet Walter.
Hello, my name is Walter Briggs, and for the next hour I hope to show you some of the techniques that I use to produce images with artworks. However, we don't have time to cover every feature that Artworks has. It's a very complex piece of software. But we will show you all the main features and how I use these to produce illustrations and graphical images. Initially, we'll look at some of the simpler processes and all the individual tools and the shortcuts that are available, and some of these are not immediately obvious even to the more experienced user. Then we'll move on to the more interesting aspect of using these techniques to produce some real pictures and illustrations. Hopefully this tutorial will be of value not only to beginners but to the more experienced user. So, assuming that you have Artworks installed, let's load it up and begin. So here is Artworks loaded onto the icon bar. All we need to do is click select the left mouse button, which brings up a page. To open it up, click on the top right hand corner. Now, there's nothing on the page because it's not active. To make it active, just click once with the select button. We'll get a yellow bar along the top telling you this screen is active. We have two toolbars on here. Now at the moment we can only see part of the page we'll be working on, so the first thing to do is to select the magnifying tool if it's not already selected for you and zoom to the window, and that will show you the page that is by default an A4 page. Now this toolbar, which has shown us that we've now zoomed to 41%, gives you various information depending on the tool we've selected, and we'll discuss that as we come to it. Now these are free floating toolbars. You can move them around if they do get in the way of anything that you're working on. In fact, this toolbar can change its orientation from vertical to horizontal by simply clicking on the little square on the top. The toolbars we'll be discussing in a lot of detail later. We also have a menu system. Pressing the middle menu button on the mouse gives you many options. Almost everything in Artworks is available through this menu system. The first at the top there is File. If we follow the arrow, it gives us various information. One of the most important ones is the F3 button key shortcut. It also gives us this save window. It's a typical Acorn save window. We can actually export our work out to formats that are popular on the PC platform. And at the bottom of this window are some choices that enable us to set up artworks to suit ourselves. The first option is the page setup. If we click on that, it shows us that we have a portrait. We can change it to a landscape page. The page is also on A4. We can change it to an A3 or any other size that we wish. We can even change the color of the paper. At the moment it's unnamed, but if we press the menu, you see a little blue page telling us there's a menu choice here. If we click on that, we can select any color we wish. So that will set up our page as we like it. The other option we have at this stage is for Artworks itself, and it's the undo buffer. This allows us to undo various actions that we might have made. The amount of save and undo we have is decided on the amount that we give it. At the moment we can leave it quite small because we'll not be doing too much work. So that's the choices we have in our options from the file. We also have an edit menu, and along on the right hand side, as we see, are all the keyboard shortcuts, and we'll mention those as we go. We can handle objects from the menu. The line types and the sizes are available from menus. We can have a different view. We can have a new view of the same window we're working on if we wish. And down at the bottom is some utilities that allow us to switch off, for example, our toolbars, to turn them on or off if we don't want to see them as we're working on our page. So that's everything that's available from our menu option. Next, what we'll be discussing are the line drawing tools. Let's begin drawing our first lines. We'll choose the curved line tool. We click select with our left mouse button, and the line will proceed. Each time we click, a new control point is inserted. We can move these control points at any time. If we just click back onto this control point and zoom in with our camera, we can see the square that is not filled is the actual control point. That can be pulled around if we click and hold with our select. The handles are solid red. If we turn those, pull those, the line will follow the shape that we decide on. You notice as we pull those handles, both sides of the line move. What we can do is constrain this point. We can do it from the toolbar, or simply double click with select, and that now locks that point, and only one side of the line will move. As you see, by pulling the handles either side, only that part of the line moves. And we can do that with any of the control points on any of the lines. So that's the curved line. The straight line tool works on exactly the same principle, inserting control points as we click, move the mouse, and we get straight lines. These control points are similar to the curved line. We can manipulate the line. In fact, if we want, we can turn this into a curved line. That point was clicked on with select. If we use adjust on the next points, the right hand button, and choose the curved line option from the toolbar, that has now become a curved line. If we just deselect that line and then select it again, and then just choose one of the control points, we see it is now a curved line. And these points can be pulled out and make that into a curved line. Only that part of the line that we chose to be curved. The rest remains straight. The next option we have are default shapes. If we pull this out holding the control key, we get a perfect square. It's filled with the default black color and a black line color. But now if we release the control and pull any of these corners, we get oblongs and rectangles which always retain their straight sides because this is a chosen shape. Again, with a fill black color. The principle works exactly the same with our oval tool. If we click and drag with the mouse with the select button held down, we get an oval shape this time. If we use the control key button as a constraint, we can get a perfect circle. These control points, any of the four will pull that into a shape that you want. That works exactly the same with our next selected tool, the rounded rectangle tool. Now if we pull this out, we see that we get a rectangle that has rounded corners, and the radius of that can be changed. If we have a look on the icon bar, there's a corner radius of 0.5 centimeter. If we change that to 1.5, the radius and press return will change, obviously, to a much greater radius, and we can put any radius we like in there. Now this also works the same as the other default tool shapes. You just pull the corner square and it will change into any shape that you like, retaining the straight sides and those rounded corners. What we can do now with the next tool, which is our line and fill color, leaving this shape on the page, is to click on that, which brings up two menus on the bottom, the fill color and the line color. Both are black. Let's have a look at the fill color. The little blue page there indicates a menu. If we press the menu button, we have an option of some of these different colors. If we click on the red, that will be our fill color. The line color is still black. It's a little difficult to see. We can change the width of that. There's a keyboard shortcut that works quite well. Control F4 brings up a line width. At the moment it's 0.14 of a centimetre. If we change that simply to 1.4, you'll see the line width is quite a lot different. And that's how we can change that line width at any stage with any of these tools. Let's now go on then to manipulate some shapes. If we want to manipulate objects, first of all we must select them, and that is the top button on the toolbar is the select button, the arrow. We click inside a shape, it becomes selected. That's the one we can then work with. There are a number of different ways of selecting objects. Just clicking with the select button on your mouse, you can pull a square around specific objects, holding down the select mouse button. Or to select everything on the page, there's a keyboard shortcut with Control A, and that will select everything. If you just click off the objects, they become deselected. It's also possible to break shapes open. You might want to join them. What we need to do is to select the line drawing tool to break this shape. We click on one of the points, it's now selected. We can break that with the option from the toolbar. If we click on that, it is now no longer filled because it isn't a shape, it's just a line. We can join it to another object, another line. What we're going to do is just rejoin it by pulling it back over the other end point, releasing it. It is once again a filled object. We can move objects with the select mouse button and the select tool. One shortcut that I like to use, and it is very handy, is just to press the left Alt key and your select tool is temporarily chosen for you, and you can use that as you would normally to move objects around. Just click and drag with that button held down. Once you release it, it goes back to the tool you were using before. You can move objects by a small amount with an option that we have once you've selected your object of using the cursor keys on the keyboard. The green shape is chosen. If we use the up cursor key on the keyboard, as you can see, it's moving by a small specific amount which you can choose in your setup. We can delete objects with the option that's used most in the Acorn, Control X. We'll delete it. We can undo that with our undo redo choices that we have. The amount of undoing that we do depends on how much memory we have and how much we've given to our undo buffer. We can undo it back as far as our memory will allow us to. Sometimes objects are overlapped because of the way we're working, and we might want to bring an object forward or send it back. The red object is at the back. If we select it and then press on the right hand arrow on the bottom toolbar, it comes to the top. Or we can send it back one object at a time, bring it back one at a time using these 4 arrow keys. Objects also can be rotated. We can rotate them by choosing the rotation tool from the icon bar on the left. It will rotate around its center axis. We can click anywhere on the object and move the mouse around with the select held down, and it will rotate that object as much as we like. Or we can specify an amount by typing in at the bottom a number of degrees. For example, 90 degrees, we'll turn that 90 degrees. Or if we just want to spin it on a specific axis, if we want to hold it perhaps at the bottom left corner, if we click the bottom left and then turn it, it will turn around the axis on that corner. We can also group objects together. Again, we must select all the objects we want to be in that group. Select them all. Control G will group them. Then they act like a single object. Wherever you move them, whatever they do, they stay together, they stay the same distance apart. And Control U will ungroup them, and once again we have 3 separate objects that we can select or deselect. One very unusual and sometimes very useful option we have is to actually create holes in objects by joining them together. If we select both of these and use the keyboard shortcut Control I, we see that now the red shape has a hole in it. That's not a white fill, it's a hole. If we pull it over the blue shape, we can see it really is a hole there. And that's joined those 2 shapes together. So now let's have a look at another facility that's available to us. If we draw a single oblong, we can duplicate that with the keyboard shortcut Control D. We can do that a number of times. Each time we do, a new object is chosen for us. And if we spread these objects out just a little so we can see them all, if we want to align all these objects up, if we select them all and bring up a window which will align and distribute them with the keyboard shortcut Control F9, we'll see that they will be aligned along the top and distributed left to right. This window gives you an idea of how it will look when you choose that option. So we'll do that and see how it will distribute these 4, 5 oblongs evenly across the page. So that's manipulating objects. Now we can go on to look in more detail at creating colours and filling objects. So we've been able to fill some objects with colours. We've only been able to use the default colours, so let's have some fun now and create a new colour of our own. If we just click and select Fill and Line Colour tool, on the Fill Colour, if we bring up the menu option, we'll see at the top we can choose a new colour. There are a number of ways of choosing colours. The way I like to do so is through the HSV colour model, because we have here a palette of colours. We can just click the mouse with the select or drag it. In the bottom we'll see the colour that we've chosen. It doesn't have to just be red. If we pull the slider along, we can get yellow, green, through blue to purple. Once we have a colour that we like, we can give it a name here, or just accept the default name that Artworks chooses for us, and then click OK. That's our fill colour, and if we bring up the menu, we'll see it on the menu bar. If we go to the top, if we're not happy with our colour, there is an option to edit that. But if we're happy with our colour, we can use that. What we can do is use that colour to create some linear and radial fills. First of all, if we just create a rectangle, there's our new fill colour. If we go to the linear fill option, it's a graduated fill, and we want to use our new colour. So if we bring up the menu there, we'll see our new colour at the bottom, new colour 17. Just click on that, and it's going to fill from our new colour 17 to yellow. All we have to do is click to start, drag our mouse, holding down select, and that gives us a linear fill in a straight line from our new colour through to yellow. You can pull it in any direction, it will give you a straight fill. As long as the object is selected, you don't have to start inside, you can start outside or pull outside of the object. The principle works exactly the same with our radial fill, except it works on a circular basis. So if we pull from the centre out, we'll see our new colour from the centre filling out to yellow. So next, what we want to do is have a look and see the advantages of having a zoom tool. On many occasions we're going to be working with something that's very small and that we need to get close to. For example, if we just draw a very small box in the middle of the page here, we can't really work with that. What we need to do is magnify the screen. So we'll select the magnification tool. What we can do is click with the select button, and that will double our magnification, or with the adjust button, which will half it. But the best way, the way I use most, is to just simply click and hold down your select button, pull out a square around the object you want to magnify and release it, and that then becomes the center of your screen. If it's not quite in the center, you can select the push tool and move it till you get it just where you want it. A shortcut that I like to use, and that's very handy, is to temporarily select the push tool by holding down the right Alt key. That enables you to use that, and you go back to the magnifying glass. Another very useful option is to be able to go back to your previous zoom. So if you're working on something, you want to get back to see how it looks, zoom in to work with it, and then you can zoom back just to see how it looks. Very simple. Next, what we want to do is to see how we can manipulate some text. So if you'd like to add some text to your document, quite simply click on the two A's on the toolbar. That's your text tool. Click select on your page. A cursor will appear where you want to insert your text, and simply just type away, put your word in. You'll see there's a default font chosen, Avant-Garde Book, and a point size of 32. We want to change both of these. The menu here will give us the opportunity of putting in a different font. Let's have Home and Bold. We can change the size of the font with the bump stops, but a quicker way if we're wanting to make a big change is to type in the point size you want, press return, and there it's a decent size. We want an outline colour, a black one, so let's put that on now. We'll be changing the fill colour to a different one. We're going to make that green, as we'll see the reason for that a little later. We can change the size and rotate and scale the text, but it remains as text, and you can still make changes. As you'll see, the spelling isn't quite right, so we can go back and put the E in, and that's no problem. It retains its attributes of being text. We can scale it besides altering the point size by using the scaling tool here on the icon bar, represented by two boxes and an arrow. The advantage of using this, particularly with text, though you can use it with any object, is that it retains, if you want, its aspect ratio, which is important with text, as you don't want it to appear too tall and thin or too short and fat. You can also flip the text on its horizontal plane or its vertical. You can rotate it. Even though it's text, you can rotate this. We can undo that back to where we started, so we've got straight text. We can insert a linear fill, if we wish, into the text. They're the default colours that are chosen, black and white. Let's just go back and undo that, so we have our plain green filled text. We can also fit text to a curve, if we wish. Another tool that we haven't discussed so far is the freehand tool. It has a measure of drawing accuracy that you can set personally. We'll just set it to 10. We don't want too many points inserted. Draw a simple curve, approximately the length of the text. We must select both the text and the curve and use another keyboard shortcut, which is Shift Control T, and that will fit your text to your curve. So we can undo that, remove the curved line. We can also blend the text, including the shapes and the colours, into, in this case, more text. So let's just duplicate that. Control D will duplicate it. Let's move it further down and change its fill colour, because we're blending the colours and the shapes together. And quite simply choosing the blend with your select on the toolbar, click and hold select on your mouse, drag from one corner to the other and release it. It will blend the shapes and the colours. You notice that now we have 7 pieces of text, 7 pineapples, because we have 5 steps, so it inserted 5 there. You can type in the number of steps you want. We've just used 5 here. Let's move on and look at the perspective and moulding tools next. So one thing we can do with perspective is apply it to text, but of course, like many of the other attributes, they can be applied to other objects. They must be selected first, then select the perspective tool from the bottom of the toolbar. If we pull down one side here and raise the opposite side, we'll see that the text produces a true perspective. And it's quite simple and very easy to apply. If we just undo that, we'll see that those principles also apply to the moulding tool. If we click on that, it's an envelope tool. It gives us an additional 2 control points that allow us to mould the text more as though it were putty. And we can alter the shape quite simply and easily. We can even save that envelope shape by applying it to a clipboard, choosing another object or creating another object, coming back to our envelope tool and taking it off the clipboard. It will then be applied to the new selected object, and it's as simple as that. So now we'll have a look at the use of layers. Now this brings us to the useful facility of being able to work in layers, so that you can work on just one layer at a time and other work that you have is not disturbed. As you see down here in the box is background. That's one of the default layers that Artworks produces when you first create a document. Here shows a possibility of a menu. So if we click on that, we'll see foreground and background. They're the two default layers. Background has the yellow rectangle around it, meaning that that's the active layer. That's the only layer we can work on at this time. It is possible to work on all the layers. If we select multi-layer, we can edit layers and create new layers. As you see here, we've created 4 new layers. Now there appears to be nothing on them, but that's only because they're switched off, and so what is there is invisible. If we switch them on, we can see everything that are on these 4 layers. These 4 objects now are visible, but we can't work with them. The only active layer is the background layer. So if we select layer 2, for example, we can now work with the objects on this layer. We can move them, manipulate them in any way. As you see, layer 2 is underneath layer 3. And it is possible to reverse the order of layers, change the order of any of the layers that we wish. So let's do that with layers 2 and 3. If we click and hold with the adjust button on the mouse, drag it up to layer 3 and release, we'll see now that layer 2 is on the top. That's the active layer. That's the one we can now work with. This also gives us the opportunity to discuss the clipboard, because we can actually move things from one layer to another layer using the clipboard. This is a very useful facility, as we can cut and paste on layers or between layers, even between documents. So layer 2, for example, if we cut that with the Acorn's Control X as the default cut option, instead of layer 2 being active, let's make layer 3 active, and Control V will paste that object back onto that layer 3. Now we can see it's there by turning off the other layers, and there both these objects are now on layer 3. As we said, we can actually paste onto other documents. If we just open this window, click a new window in Artworks, Control V will paste the last thing that was on the clipboard, layer 2. So that is also very useful. So the layers enable us to work on one or many layers at any given time. So there are just now a couple of other remaining items that we'd like to show you. As you can see, what we have on screen is a rectangle with a linear fill. This is to demonstrate the WYSIWYG tool. WYSIWYG meaning what you see is what you get. At the moment it's set at its highest resolution, that's 11. That gives us the best on-screen view. But this is a compromise, because the best view will slow down the redraw and therefore your work. You'll see as we move down the WYSIWYG tool, the on-screen view will degrade to 6, the line thickness is gone. We get down to 5, the linear fill is gone. We get below that, we'll see that we only have an outline. What I find is 7 to be a very good compromise between screen redraw and the resolution of what you see on the screen while you're working. Another point we haven't mentioned so far is the grid. We can actually switch on a grid, which means that any object we move is locked to this grid. And the values of the grid can be changed to suit yourself. We can see the grid if we wish. If we go down through View and the grid, we'll see we can switch it on, we can show the grid, and there we can see it and see that this rectangle is locked to this grid. We can switch off the snap to grid, and though it's visible, we're no longer tied to these grid markings. We can switch that back off through View, so it's no longer visible. Hopefully the last thing you'll be wanting to do will be print out your masterpiece. Quite simply, just press the print key on your keyboard and you'll be given a window like this with various options to choose from. You can have it portrait or landscape. There'll be possibly one of the things you'll want to change. You can actually get it to fit on page if you've been working on something larger than your printer can handle. Actually, you can create a poster if you wish using the tiling option. That will create various tiles which you can cut and stick together. If you have a color printer, you can set it up to print in color. Then finally, all you have to do is click on print. So that's given you a rough idea of the kind of facilities that Artworks has to offer. Now we come to the difficult bit, actually producing an illustration or an image. What we've chosen for this is a tiger. It looks impressive, it covers most of the features we've discussed, but actually it's fairly simple. What you can do is draw it freehand if you have the artistic ability, draw the outline. If not, you can trace the outline on a piece of acetate or tracing paper from your photograph or the image that you're copying from. Produce that by sticking it onto the screen, tracing around it in artworks. That will give you the outline. It'll give you the perspective and the proportions that you need, and then you can begin work with artworks producing the actual image. So as you can see, we've copied our tracing of the tiger onto the artworks page. Here we have the head, because what we've done is copy each constituent part, the major part of the tiger, onto different layers. The mouth is here, the ears, the stripes and nose, along with the eyes, all on their own layers. And we're going to begin with the eyes. If we just zoom in on this left eye here, what we want to do is begin with the iris. It's a very dramatic part of the eye, and it works by using a radial fill of a beautiful green and an unusual brown, but we get a beautiful luminosity when we match that up with the second part of the iris, which is a straight fill, a linear fill, back from the inner part to the outer part, and those two will create a nice luminous green eye when we come to it. The iris, the pupil is simply black. Black outline with a black fill, and the highlight is all white, pure white. Fill color of white and a line color of white to give that highlight. Because the eyes are slightly hooded, we just darken this fill area here with a linear fill over the eye to just give that hooded look. The outer part of the eye is a black area. It's not pure black. We'll use a linear fill just pulled straight down through this section. It's almost black, but we'll use a 90% black through to about 50%, and that gives us a good dark area around the eye. There is a light point in the eye. We can use the same linear fill, similar colors, only of a lighter hue. We'll take it to about 20% to 50%, and that really is the eye done. What we can do now is just select all of the eye and remove all of the lines now, make those none. While we have it selected, we'll duplicate it with Ctrl D. We'll take it across to the other side because both eyes are very similar, and with our resize tool, there's an option in there to be able to flip that on its horizontal plane, and just holding our Alt key down temporarily, we can drag that into the area that will hold our right eye. Just delete that last line there, Ctrl X, and then when we zoom back, we'll see both beautiful eyes finished quite simply. So let's now begin some work on the head. As you can see, both sides of the head are very similar, so we'll begin working on the right, and most of these principles will apply to the left. We're going to fill the main area of the head with a nice radial fill that will give it a real orange feel. And next, what we want to do is apply an interesting technique that allows us to fill two areas with the same color at the same time. It's a linear fill. We're going to produce the white areas of the tiger's head, which makes it white through to a nice peach fur color, and you can see both areas of the tiger's head are filled at the same time. We can also apply a linear fill to the cheekbone area of the tiger. This time the color is different. It's a similar bright yellow on one side, but on the other side it goes down to a nice rich brown. That gives us a good fill and a dark area for the head. So next we can use these same principles then to finish the rest of the head. So what we're going to do now is speed up the process to save boring you. But all the head areas are produced using similar linear and radial fills. What we want to do now is select all the areas to remove the black outlines, and then you'll be able to see the completed head. And there we are. So let's continue our work. We'll work now on the stripes of the tiger's head. We just zoom in here so we can work more closely on this area. It's a simple linear fill slightly lighter at the top, not solid shades of black. We need to select that first and then just bring in that fill. Slightly lighter at the top. The principle applies with all the stripes. You can vary the length you pull it depending on how much light you want to appear at the top of that fill. So once again, we're going to speed up the process of producing the stripes. They're all exactly the same, linear fills. And what we want to do is get this done as quickly as possible so we can show you how things are going. You don't have to trace all of the stripes. I did, but if you want to do it freehand, that's fine. What we're going to just do is zoom in and then remove the outlines, the black outlines of the cat. Just make those all none so we can see how they look. We'll just come back to our zoom, and now we'll put together what work we have got done so far. We'll have a look at the head and at the eyes and see how our cat's looking so far. So this brings us then to the ears of the big cat. What we'll do is we'll just work on the left hand ear here, creating the outer ear with a nice rich fill of an orange to a brown, and then because it's very significant on the tiger, we'll just give it a black tip to its ear. We'll just put a solid black in there, and because so far we haven't had the opportunity to show you a blend, now we can do so. We'll create a concave blend, so we'll blend from dark to light this time. We'll put the darker colour in the inside this time, and on the outer we'll have a lighter colour, so we get this nice blend with a darker colour on the inside. We'll clone that, Control K, we'll clone that. That will give us an exact duplicate which we can resize down. Make this one much darker, because this again will be the inner ear we want to appear concave. We'll remove the black lines because we don't want those to show, and quite simply pull through a 15-step blend to create that nice concave effect on the inner ear. Moving that to the back, we can see the ear is complete. Perhaps just remove that line so we can see the ear as it's finished. We have some white fur to add, but like the other ear, we can do that later. So let's now begin working on the nose of the tiger. What we need to do first of all is to zoom in, get close, and create a fill for the muzzle. It's basically white. It's a radial fill from white to a light grey, and then around the nostrils is a black area. We'll use a linear fill for that. Just pull a straight line down and change the white to black to give us a nice black area around the nostrils. We want to now create the nostrils as a blend, so if we choose that, create a linear fill, lighter at the top than at the bottom, so that gives us control over the direction of the light. We want to put in a light fill, fur 5 to a dark brown of 72, and then we'll clone that with Control K and reduce it as usual with the aspect ratio locked. We're going to blend these two together, remove them up. We want to change the back one now because this shape will include a pink, because the big cat's nostrils have a pink shade to them. The next thing we want to do is remove the black lines before we blend, and using a 15-step blend we just pull one shape into another, and that gives us a nice blend in the cat's nostrils. If we go back to our previous zoom, we're going to work on the same principle on the muzzle of the big cat. We use a radial fill, and this one is new color 9 to 17, which gives us a nice rich color. We'll clone that again, Control K, we'll clone that. Only this time when we reduce this one, we want to take the aspect ratio lock off because we want to make it narrower as well as smaller, moving it to one side to give us a shadow on that side. And we want to change the fill this time from 9 to 72, and 9 on this side, removing the black lines so they don't interfere with our blend, and then we'll blend these two together to give us an interesting fill. That brings the fill to the front. If we just put it back behind the nose so we can see the other features more clearly, we can use a blend or a radial fill on the sides of the muzzle. This is rounded, so a natural fill, if we just reverse these colours now, would be quite natural. If we use new colour 9 to say 17, that should give us a nice rich colour on these high points. The same on this side, using the same colours. That creates our blend or our fill. All we have to do is zoom back to our screen size, select all these points to remove the black lines, and see how our nose looks now. That looks fine. So let's look at our final main feature, the mouth of the tiger. As usual, we'll zoom in to work on this. What we'll start with are the teeth. These are simple radial fills from white to a light grey. We'll do the same with both of these teeth, a white to a light grey. We can choose the same colours, only in a linear fill down for the chin of our big cat. And what we can do also is to just draw in freehand a small shape here that we'll use later for a blend. We'll not be cloning and duplicating this time. We'll be blending with this freehand shape. We also want to add just here another fill of colour, a linear fill, only this time it's very black. This is the outer part of the cat's mouth. That brings us then to these two side pieces of beautiful orange, these colours of this lovely cat. This time it's a fill colour of quite a dark brown to a much lighter colour here, first 6. Same colours on the other side, perhaps a little lighter, so we'll pull out from a bit further away, and we'll leave it. We select it first, it helps, and we'll leave it a little sooner, perhaps pull that up a little higher. So that just needs us to get these things in order. If we just send that back 1, we can see the teeth now. One thing we want to do now is to create our blend. The one in the chin needs to have, first of all, the line removed, and then if we select the blend and the two shapes, make sure there are no lines, 15 steps, pull one into the other, and we get a nice blend in the chin area. This is also what we're going to do with the tongue. We're going to create a blend, introducing some new colours, a lovely pink. But first of all, we want this fur 9, this very dark colour, to a very pale pink, new colour 5. We'll make this one a little bit lighter because we're going to use 2 colours. This time we will clone the shape with Ctrl K and reduce it in size. And then we'll make this one a little darker. We'll use a darker pink. We'll keep the same dark colour, but this time the pink will be slightly darker. We need to remove the lines of both of these so it won't affect the blend, and just simply pull them in together. Now we have a nice blend for the tongue. So that's the mouth completed. If we just zoom back, we can take off the lines now, select everything again, take away all our lines. We're left with the completed mouth. So let's see how the cat looks together as far as we've got it. We're going to have a look at the various layers. We'll just switch them on one at a time to see how the cat looks. As you'll see at the top of our menu, we have yet to add the whiskers and some fur in the ear. They're just simply freehand lines drawn quite simply. So now we'll look at our final picture. Well, let's now move on to a completely different type of picture, a landscape. This time, because none of the outlines are critical, we won't bother with tracing anything. we'll just put in a few freehand lines and use a few different techniques to produce this new image. So we'll begin our picture by putting in a horizon line. Before we do that, you'll notice that I've created a page which is rather long and narrow. There's a reason for that. This is the orientation I want. You can create any page size you like. It allows me to move the toolbar up at the top so it doesn't get in the way. Using the line tool, we'll just put a straight line across the horizon, slightly above halfway, to set what will become our mountain range. And then with the freehand tool, set it about 20, that's about right. We'll just randomly add some mountains, just quite quickly, a random effect across the screen. We must join up both ends to get a fill colour. They must be enclosed shapes. And that's our mountain range. Quite simply, solid black, that will be the default fill colour. We want to put a sky in at this point, just with the rectangle tool, just clicking at the top corner and dragging out a rectangle that goes right below the lowest of the mountains because we don't want anything showing underneath. It comes on top, of course, and the fill is white to black. We want to change that fill. It'll be top to bottom, and we'll just move that first of all by, I'll just temporarily select the tool that will enable me to send this to the back. And now we want to change the colours. I've created just 5 colours for this picture, 5 new colours besides the default ones. The one I'm going to be using will be a nice bright orange, and that will be orange to our sky green. Now that orange is a little light. What I'm going to do is change the orange to a deeper one and get it the opposite way. All we have to do to just change that around is just start with our linear fill at the bottom and pull it back up, and there we have, perhaps a little higher, a nice sunset. For the water, it's the same principle. We just drag out a rectangle. If we just deselect that so we don't pull out a rectangle, another rectangle that fills the page with our water. So now you realize it's a seascape we have. It's filled with the last 2 colours we used. We'll just send that to the back behind the mountain range, and we'll change these colours as well. We don't want these colours. We want an orange reflection, so we'll leave the water orange in, but not green this time. We want a watercolour. This sea blue is what we'll be using, and of course the fill needs to go from orange and reflection to blue. So that gives us our background reflection in the water. Let's pull that up a little more to get a nice blue water colour. Now what we want to do is just put in some random reflections in the water of the mountain range. We'll do 2 small ones, even though it's a continuous range. We'll just do these random, just to give an impression of a reflection in the water. We'll just take that line colour off because that makes it difficult to see if that's about right. Perhaps stretch it out a little more, just as a reflection in the water of the mountains. We're just creating impressions here. We'll create another one on this side, straight across, not quite straight. We can pull that into shape very quickly. Once we've got it in, let's move it a bit closer to the mountains. There's a reflection there. Move the fill up a little. We just want to create the impression of a reflection in the water. There's one more area of colour we want to put in, just so we're able to blend the background and foreground together, because we have some points of interest to put in as well. This is just our background, enabling us to blend the water more gradually from top to bottom. Just pull this out to the side a little more. You'll see why we want this in a moment as we put our points of interest in. There's not too much contrast. Perhaps this range of mountains doesn't look quite right. We'll not spend too long with that. It seems to work. Let's put our points of interest in and see how our eye is brought forward to this. We're going to put in a fishing boat, starting with a rectangle, approximately the middle of the page. We'll fill that solid black because this is just going to be a silhouette in the sky. We'll put a line colour in as well because we'll be putting some features on that. Zoom in to work with it. Now, because we used a rectangle, that shape needs to be turned into an editable shape. Control N will do that. Now we can add some points and change the shape of the fishing boat. Give it a prow. Add a couple of points here that enables us to pull this down a little. Put a stern on so we get the front and the back looking a little like a boat. And again we can just put a couple of points here to pull this down. Fishing boats are quite narrow, so we need to get this down a reasonable amount to make it look right. If we put in a wheelhouse and some other squares and masts, it'll start to take a little more shape. We'll just use some rectangles to put in masts and areas of interest on the boat itself. The fishing boat has a rather distinctive pair of masts at the back. For the angled one, we'll just use the straight line tool. Perhaps make this one a little narrower as a mast. What we want to do is give the impression of a wheelhouse by putting in a window. This is where we join shapes that we explained a little earlier. You can't see that. Let's just make that a little lighter than black, 80%. Just so we can alter this, we'll turn it into a shape with Control N. Enables us to pull this forward because the wheelhouse actually, once we make it into a shape, can be eased forward. It's quite a distinctive shape, the wheelhouse on a fishing boat. So that's our window and our wheelhouse, and if we join those two shapes together with Control I, we'll see we have the window being empty. We'll just fill that with solid black once again so we get the silhouette. If we zoom back, we can have a look at how it's looking now. We deselect that. So what we need to do now is, because it's a silhouette against a sunset, is give it a reflection in the water, which is almost the shadow reflection of the boat. Just random lines because of the water movement. You'll just get a random effect in the water of our boat. Again, the shape must be joined before we can fill it. It will fill automatically with the last colour we used, which is black. We just make that slightly lighter, perhaps 80% black to sea blue. And if we take off these lines now, these strong lines, the reflection should look about right, or it should look like a reflection. That's the main point. Let's see if we deselect that boat, how it looks. So let's move on. It doesn't, it's a little isolated there, and your eye is drawn to the one thing. To balance the picture, we'll put in another couple of small boats to just give balance to our picture. If we put them here and then zoom in to pull them into some kind of shape, it's quite easy to add a few points to give the impression of a boat just sitting in the water here. Straight bottom as it sits on the fairly calm water. Just pull these till you get the bottom straight. Give it a mast in the same way, just a rectangle. Now these, as you can see, are a bit lighter. If we just change the colour of these, if we select them both, change the colour back to a black. What we want to do now is just group these. Control G will group these two, because if we zoom back to our previous zoom, we see that to get the balance right, we could really do with two boats. So if we add a shadow to this one, we'll then duplicate it. Just quickly add a shadow. Just the impression of the boat is what we want. as a shadow. Fill that with grey. 80% grey is fine. Just pull this line straight. Join these two together again by grouping them, Control G. Let's zoom back and duplicate them with Control D, and then we'll just take this boat and set it across the other side to just give it some balance. Possibly in our resize tool, flip it on its horizontal plane, turn it the other way to just give it a bit of interest so it doesn't look too much like a copy of the other one. And quite simply, we have a picture done very quickly just using solid shapes and bright colours, and there's an interesting seascape. Well, that's just about it. So hopefully you've enjoyed and learned something from our little tutorial. We haven't been able to cover all the details, but hopefully you've discovered how easy it can be to produce some impressive pictures using Computer Concepts artworks.
Pineapple's virus protection scheme offers the best possible protection against Archimedes computer viruses. The software comes in two parts. vProtect is permanently installed in your computer and gives an immediate warning if any virus attempts to copy itself or infect any of your applications. Killer itself can be installed on the icon bar and will then scan any of your floppy disks or the computer hard disk. A simple menu option sets which disk will be scanned, and then just clicking on the menu will start the scan. If any viruses are found, they can either be removed automatically or you can be prompted with a window. Many options are also available for automatic scanning. Pineapple now have two PAL coders which enable you to display your Archimedes screen output on a normal TV set or record it onto a video recorder. The PLC3 will work with any standard screen mode, such as mode 12 or mode 15. It has both composite video and SVHS outputs available, as well as a socket to feed the normal computer monitor. The AVK3 is a more versatile unit, which will operate with any screen mode up to 800 by 600 resolution. It will also work with screen outputs from Mac and PC computers. The remote control allows features such as zooming and panning, which makes the unit ideal for lectures and demonstrations, where large groups of people need to see detailed areas of the computer screen. The video you've been watching used this unit to produce all the computer screenshots. The removable hard drive system has many advantages over drives which are permanently installed. The main benefit is probably security. When you leave your computer, you can simply take your hard disk with you. The system also provides an easy way to rapidly transfer large data files from one computer to another. The system is very inexpensive, with plug-in drives costing little more than standard hard drives. Both SCSI and IDE systems are available. The Canon flatbed scanner is the most popular of a range of colour scanners which are available from Pineapple. It produces superb results and is ideal for scanning images which can then be retouched using Studio 24 if required. The resolution and colour rendering make it especially suitable for reproducing high-quality images, as you can see here. Unfortunately, we have not yet found a way to reproduce the metal strip. Studio 24 is a powerful painting and photo retouching package which provides just about every facility you could require. Many of the screens used in this video were produced using Studio 24, and Walter Briggs has created many amazing pictures using the package. The smudge brush and the undo brush shown here are just two of its many features. Don't forget that Pineapple can supply all your Acorn computer needs. As registered Acorn dealers and independent software developers, we have staff who can advise you as to the best choice of computer hardware and software. We have most products on display in our offices, so why not come and visit us soon?